Bear on Bears fans, another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast coming your way. Pat the designer, Courtney Cronin, the schedule is out. We broke it down a little bit last night with J-Mac. Gotta break it down now with Courtney. This is going to be the big news of pretty much the rest of this week because everybody's going to be getting their predictions in. Everybody's going to be seeing how it fares. And I'm going to be honest with you, Courtney. I think a lot of Chicago fans were a little bit surprised with how many division games we finished the season off with. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Yesterday was schedule release. I was having a conversation with my editor about this. Like, what other sport has a whole day and the lead up time dedicated to finding out the schedule? Like, you and I talked about this with the NBA. Like, imagine like people being this excited for the Bulls schedule to drop or, 162 game Major League Baseball schedule to drop to figure out where, the series are that you want to go see. I don't know. It's wild, but like, if you think about, and I know we'll get to the Bears schedule, but if you think about how many different platforms you need to have if you want to watch NFL games other than just like linear cable, It's Amazon Prime, Netflix now, whatever the HBO thing is.
HBO Max.
Yeah, like it's kind of wild how much the NFL has dispersed into other platforms to where if you think about some of the older NFL fans, like what are they going to do? Do they all have streaming platforms and everything else? It's kind of wild to think about how much the league has, capitalized on the moment where a lot of people are cutting the cord, but still like a majority of their fans are that of that age will not be joining them on these other platforms. So I guess if you want to watch London, watch that game, you better, what is that? Is that one on ESPN Plus?
I believe that's on ESPN Plus. There's
NFL Network.
The tough part is like there's so many now that you almost have to. We've like cut the cord backwards. We've kind of like all the cord cutters have kind of like screwed ourselves in a corner because now they're like, oh, well, we're going to give you this on a service. But the one thing I love about sports is the ability to just flip back and forth between channels. Now I get it, right? Like on that game, it's like, oh, it's the Christmas Day game. You're not flipping channels, right? This is the only game that's happening. Or it's Thanksgiving Day. This is the only game happening. You're not flipping channels. But it's the next big invention, I'm gonna tell you this right now, is the person that figures out how to get all your streaming services wrapped into one. And you can just flip through them like a regular remote, which is just going to become cable again. We're back to cable, but with 17 different services providing it. But I agree with you. It is the NFL this season. Just the last couple of seasons, you're bringing a lot of different people in to cover NFL games in different ways, and everybody's not good at it. That's kind of my problem with it.
It's and I'm curious to see how Netflix, like who are the broadcasters going to be for Netflix? Because Christmas falls on a Wednesday, I believe, this year. Because the next day then is the Bears playing the Seahawks at home on Thursday Night Football. So last year it made sense, Monday Night Football, you had the 3 games, each effectively with their own, each of their own primetime window, more or less. They had their own window. But it's, Amazon has definitely caught the short end of the stick for some of the games that they've had to broadcast the first 3 years of their existence. And then, with Netflix, like who's going to be part of that crew? I don't think the NFL is done at this point. Like they're trying to capitalize every single day during the week, during the season. They don't have Saturday. They probably won't have Saturday as a consistent thing because of college football. And outside of those couple games we see in December that go on that Saturday window. And then, Tuesday, like that'll be the only other day that like is left for conquering. I don't think the NFL would ever allow that based on how the schedules work, with Sunday being the marquee day of the schedule and having to turn around and play a game less than 48 hours later. But don't put anything past them because they have shown they do not care about the short turnaround for NFL teams to get ready, as long as it gives them a window that they can capitalize on and that they can just, continue to see a ratings increase with.
Oh yeah, we're just waiting until it gets like baseball, Courtney. Remember during COVID, you were getting those Tuesday Steelers games at like 2:00 in the afternoon. You're like, I'm at work right now. Why is there a football game happening? What's this going on? If the NFL's getting, I'm not a fan of it, but here's the problem. I'm gonna watch.
Of course.
Like that's
we're gonna sign up. Peacock. the game on, what was it? The Chiefs-Dolphins game last year. I'm, like, stealing my mom's Xfinity login so I can watch it on Peacock. Um, yeah, I mean, they're gonna get us all. You're gonna just be looking at your bank account and seeing, like, 9.99, 9.99, 9.99 a month, and you're just gonna be racking up bills trying to watch all of these games because you have to watch them on, like, 12 different platforms right now.
Absolutely. It's getting wild out here. But at least, here's the thing, at least the expectation around the Chicago Bears team is there will be better football to watch as they show up on some of these platforms this year. And that's what's exciting about this schedule release to me. I mean, like that's always now is the dream era. Now is the hope era. I'm seeing 16 and 2. I'm seeing 17 and 0, Courtney, or 16 and 1,
Yeah.
17 and 0s out there. I'm seeing 15 and 3. People are believing that this schedule is in the Bears' favor. I have the Bears 10 and 7 right now. I have them going 4 and 2, I believe, in the division. Sweeping the Lions, splitting with the Packers, splitting with the Vikings. How does this schedule play out for you? Because this is a interesting start to the season, and then
Mhm.
post bye week, you've got a real gauntlet on your hands.
Yeah, I will say that I think the NFL, we know there's a formula that goes into how they make the schedule every year. It's supposed to be this big kept secret. Well, apparently it's very hard to keep the schedule secret considering all the leaks that were out there.
Yeah.
And I saw this the other day and I couldn't agree with it more. The NFL's schedule release and the leaks are basically the equivalent of legal tampering during the free agency window because they purposely put out like the trickle of information starting from Monday or Tuesday into their big release on Thursday. But,
Yeah.
you know, hearing what the Bears like, you started to see the pieces. Okay, London game. Jacksonville is, I think their over under right now is 8.5. They're probably closer to like the top of the NFL as far as like teams that are expected to win a lot of games next year.
Right.
That was the first game we find out, and then you start to get bits and pieces with Detroit coming in on Thanksgiving Day, and then you hear about the opener, and I had thought and I thought it was going to be a division opener because if
I was with
history
you.
tells us anything
Yeah.
about this team, it's usually Green Bay or Detroit in week one. At least it has been for, the better part of the last decade since 2015. I believe it's Green Bay 4 times in week one. And then that Detroit game, I believe 2020 was also a week one game. So I think you and I had talked about what, my prediction was Sunday Night Football, Detroit in Detroit, division rivals, a national window. But for
Right.
them to open up with Tennessee, a team that's definitely in a rebuild, but I don't think it's going to, it's certainly not going to be a cakewalk. I think it's a perfect opportunity for Bears fans to get like a real feel for what this team is like, because unlike last year, and I know we didn't know what Jordan Love was going to be early on, and there was this maybe a little bit of sense of hubris among certainly among the Bears fan base of,
Right.
okay, Rodgers is gone, new day, we're take the North, time to do it. And
Felt a
then
lot like the old day.
and then reality sunk in really
Yeah.
quickly last year. This one to me feels like a really nice easing in process for Caleb Williams. Now, I'm not saying the game is easy by any stretch, but take a look at what their first 7 weeks are before the bye. So Tennessee, at Houston, at Indianapolis, against the Rams at home, Carolina at home, and then Jacksonville, which is a home game that they're playing in London. That's not that's not NFC North champion Detroit in there. There's no Green Bay Packers, knowing that, just like their history against that team. They haven't beaten them since 2018. They're a tough opponent.
Right.
I just feel like they did the Bears. I'm not saying that they tried to do this, but I do think that they did the Bears some
Oh yeah.
favors here with the way that the schedule opens up. And maybe they make up for it by the way that they threw all of those division games in beyond week 11, with 6 of their last 8 opponents being Minnesota, Detroit, and Green Bay 2 times each. But I think this is going to be a good way for Caleb Williams to, get his feet wet in the NFL. Again, not saying these games are going to be easy, but I think you'd rather have a Tennessee team at home versus going, what we had thought, going to Detroit in week
Yeah.
one, playing the team that just won the division last year.
When you look at this week 2 matchup, that's one that I really key in on. How important
Mhm.
do you think that is on Ryan Pohl's calendar right now? How do you
Oh,
think that this is the guy you let go? This is the guy you let go past. This is, I guess, in theory, right? This is the one that got away, if you want to say it that way. But
sure.
realistically speaking, you kind of were in a situation where you like, yeah, it's okay. We're not looking for quarterbacks right now. We know it's coming next year. We're hoping to be in the market for one next year if Justin Fields doesn't work out. But he looked really, really good in that first year. How big of a game is this week 2 on Ryan Pohl's calendar right now?
CJ Stroud is always going to serve, I think, in a way, as the measuring stick for this franchise, just because simply like, yeah, it was a conscious choice they made to trade that pick away and to not go after him. I don't know if anybody, Bears included, thought he would have turned out to be what he was his rookie season, but
Right.
this Houston team is a lot better, which is kind of crazy to think about. Like, I mean, the team was 10-7 last year. They won a playoff game at home. They get to the divisional playoffs and lose to the Ravens, but they're a really good team. Imagine how much better they're going to be this year. They've fortified their receiving core even more by bringing in Stephon Diggs. They've made additions to their defense. They brought Danielle Hunter in. That's not going to be an easy test
At
by
all.
any stretch, but it's a good and it's not going to be like the jury's not going to be out on Caleb Williams if the Bears lose this game, but a chance to measure yourself against another young quarterback early on, 2 weeks into the season in a primetime game. That's it's almost like you use week 1 to get the jitters out of the way, to get all of the first time butterflies out of the way, and then right into it week 2, you're on the road playing, a team that won its division last year and a team that's primed to do it again this year. So, I I look at that first 7 or no, excuse me, first 10-week stretch rather, where
Yeah.
you've got the league's youngest quarterbacks, and that's a good it's not just Houston, it's Will Levis, who's a second-year quarterback.
Yep.
You've got Anthony Richardson, who will be back for the Colts this year, Bryce Young in week 5. Then you go to Washington, Jaden Daniels, and then maybe, very likely, who knows, week 10,
Probably Drake May.
Drake May.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to gauge the growth of your young quarterback. And for a team that's trying to prove it can shatter the notion that the Bears can't develop a young quarterback talent, this is a good chance to be like, all right, yes, we can. And here's how he stacks up against other young up and comers who are one day hoping to be the face of the league, the way that Caleb Williams has set goals for himself to be in that category. So, again, I don't think it could have worked out any better for Caleb Williams to not have to go against Patrick Mahomes. Not that the Chiefs were on the schedule this year, but they don't have to go against like the Hall of Famers
Yeah.
right away in his career, where he has more of an even playing field against a lot of these quarterbacks that in this, quote unquote head to head matchup that he's going up against in a lot of those games in the first 10 weeks of the season. It's a good chance to see, okay, how far are we? How far is this quarterback? What more do they need to do to help him? Like if it's going great, what are the reasons it's going great? If it's not
Right.
going so great, you can then measure yourself up as a team against the teams that you've played and that are teams that are on more of an even play, even par with you than maybe some of the other ones that are like light years ahead.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that you get an opportunity to get your feet wet before you get into what essentially the NFL is trying to recreate here in this black and blue division from week 11 to week 18.
Yeah.
By week 10, Caleb's going to have more of an understanding. Caleb and Rome, right? You got
Mhm.
to include him in that as well. Are going to have more of an understanding of, okay, this is NFL speed. This is how we need to play. There's going to be more of a chemistry built up, and your hope is that by that week 10, you're sitting maybe 6-4, kind of 6-4 range. And you're sitting there saying, okay, now we have to go into these games where just about every single game is going to be massively important. But I know how my teammates work. I know how my receivers like the ball. I know how to run this offense. I've got a grasp on this. You kind of said it, right? Like it's almost like the NFL was like, we don't want you to suck, dude. Like I know they didn't, but
Yeah.
it's almost
No, I
like
hear
we
you.
we we need to give the Bears a shot here. We cannot start them off with the black and blue division right away. Let them figure things out. Not to say that these are easy games. I think the Jaguars in London is going to be tough. They got home field advantage pretty much. I think that
Mhm.
the Texans for sure, but I don't think the Rams have fallen off as much as
No. They're
everybody
play
thinks that they has. Like
playoff team last year. Like, it's I again, the way that they do these schedule releases and the way that they build the schedule, I don't know if it's really, like, meant to serve any team, favor any team over another, but I was trying to find it. Like, I wonder based on, like, who got the most primetime games this year? Do we know? Like, it's probably, I mean, the Chiefs have, I know obviously they've got several. It doesn't feel like we have anything like the Jets though last year. Remember how many primetime games they got put into early on? And of course they had to, like, they had the Friday, they had the Monday night game, they've had Sunday night football, I believe, twice. They had the Thursday Black Friday game. Like, and they were putting bad football in primetime windows. And I know primetime has the connotation of being nighttime, like Monday night football, Sunday night football, and Thursday night football. I consider primetime to be, when do I have the window where nobody else has it? So they're
Yeah.
going to have that when they play Detroit. They're going to have that when they play the Jaguars in London. I don't feel like the NFL set anybody up for failure though this year, where it's because there comes a lot of expectation with putting teams on in those primetime windows. A lot of those nighttime games comes a lot of expectations with that. Now, I'm not saying they did them
40,
any
by the way,
favors.
not to cut you off, 49ers, Cowboys, and Jets, to answer your question. Those are
They
the
each
3
have
teams
5
with each looks like these are the
or 4.
teams, NFL primetime games more than any other team, 6 times for each squad.
Okay, like, and they're probably doing that because, I mean, certainly the Cowboys have a national audience. They know that you can't fool anybody about that. Oh, it's just how it worked out. No.
Yeah.
Rodgers coming back, he's 40 years old. If it doesn't happen now, it's never going to happen. And then the 49ers just won the NFC again. So it doesn't feel like they're setting any team up for failure, like a young team like the Bears, before you get to a place. And it's crazy because I know people look at it before, like they had more primetime games when they were a terrible team
Yeah.
the last couple of years. I don't think anybody should be complaining about the fact that they have, one of each, and they're not, a team that has 5 or 6 primetime games. They're not ready for that yet. And why put a product out there that you really are kind of rolling the dice with? Like, we think they're going to be good. Most of us have them making the playoffs as a 10-win team, but what if things don't go right? Then you obviously have, like, the right to flex those games out of prime time, but you don't want to be in that situation if you're the NFL, having to move things around because a team failed to meet expectations. So I think it's a fair number of primetime games for them, for a team that's dominated the NFL's offseason and there's a lot of intrigue. Caleb Williams, with him comes a draw, and that's
Yeah.
very evident in the way that the schedule is built, but it doesn't feel like it's overkill of something that's not a proven product just yet, which if you look at it from, like, an unbiased perspective, you're like, okay, that's a fair number of games that they have in prime time, knowing that they do have other windows that the spotlight's going to be on them.
I wonder what the NFL is calling primetime, because I'm looking at this list of teams that have primetime games. There's 3 that
Uh-huh.
have 6: San Francisco, Dallas, New York, the Jets.
Mhm.
And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams that have 5, all premier teams in the league. But yeah, Kansas City, Buffalo,
Sure.
Packers, Lions, Bengals. But it's like there's a lot of, like, is anytime you're on a different channel prime time now? Are they
Kind
counting
of feels like
anytime? You know what I mean? Like, is it like if
I
you're on Hulu prime time? I don't know if that's prime
Kind
time.
kind of in a way, because that's like my theory of, if you have your own window where no other teams are, and
Yeah,
yeah, I know 8:30 Central Time on a Sunday morning in October is not technically prime time, but if you're a Bears fan and you're not going to London, you're gonna be up watching that game. That
yeah,
is technically, in my opinion, a prime time window, because the only eyeballs are on the Jaguars and the Bears at that time.
yeah.
So I I just don't feel like the NFL's learned its lesson. Like last year, the Giants were in prime time 4 different times. That team was terrible.
Yeah.
The NFL learns its lesson by not having to force teams into a situation where, you know, the team might not be very good, the football might not be very good. That's going to affect your viewership window. And the NFL is cognizant of that. They're not trying to make mistakes by setting teams up for failure and then thus setting themselves up for failure with that.
When you get to the point where you're on Twitter and the fan base of the team is going, "Please, God, stop.
Take us out of
Flex
prime
this
time.
out.
Put us in
Flex
the
us
put
out
us
of
in the 1 p.m. window.
That's when you know it's jumped the shark. I don't Are there any teams on there? Not really, I guess. Like the All of the teams on there, I think in prime time are going to be pretty good. I'm not maybe the Rams. Maybe the Rams will be questionable, but I still think the Rams are going to be a pretty good
I
team.
think
The
they're
teams
gonna
that
be
have
a
the
really
least,
good team.
I thought everybody had to get a primetime game. Carolina does not have one.
No, I don't think there's any rule for it, like, where you
Okay.
have to have, no, because I remember Detroit a couple of years ago was a team that had no primetime games.
This is
They
true.
had
Yeah.
their one window, which was Thanksgiving Day, which is theirs. They've had that forever. It's the 12:30 Eastern time slot. I believe it was 2022, the year that they just missed the playoffs, where they had no primetime games until they got flexed into Sunday Night
Yeah.
Football in in Green Bay that year. And look, like they quietly became one of the best teams in the NFC, and now they've got several primetime windows, which I'm actually, for any game to open up Sunday Night Football in the NFL, I think if it wasn't going to be Bears Lions, having it be Rams Lions in Detroit is a pretty good one.
Oh
Knowing
yeah.
the Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford storyline, which now kind of comes back into the forefront because Goff just got paid. You're going to probably have a Monroe St. Brown getting paid at some point soon. Like this is teams a lot of star power on
Yeah.
both sides, and you know the Rams, how do they look without Aaron Donald in the first couple, the first game, like, without him? Like there's a lot of intrigue on that will provide good theater to kick off the season that weekend.
Yeah. There's a very large hole in the middle of the Rams that will not be there. That is, I mean, listen, I think he's probably the best interior defensive lineman we've ever seen in the game, especially with the size and the stature that he had. Yeah, it's gonna be a very big I feel bad for the guy that's like, all right, you gotta replace him. What? Dog? Like, I gotta replace Aaron Donald. When you look at this schedule, we've kind of done it from week 1 to week 10. Week 11 to week
Yeah.
18 is really this gauntlet. Packers, Vikings, Lions, Niners, Vikings, Lions, Seahawks, Packers. I mean, if you lose 2 of these, the
This will be
playoff
the
hopes are
test.
probably done, right? Like this is a tough matchup NFC wise, all NFC teams, and of course NFC North wise. Yeah, this is where you play everybody in the division twice. How do
Six
you look at this?
6 division opponents in an 8-week stretch to end the season, with once again going to Green Bay in week 18, the place where they couldn't play spoiler last year, and they got embarrassed, and the Packers then made it to the playoffs and made it to the divisional round. They don't want that to happen again. This is a good, you think about like revenge games. I know we had to write a category on revenge games, which typically, you I don't know. Can you call DeAndre Swift playing Detroit a revenge game, considering he's now 2 teams removed from playing them? Can you call Tennessee a revenge game for Kevin Byard? I know he's excited about it because I saw his tweet where he had the eyeball emojis on week
Yeah.
1. I don't know. But like, revenge game wise, Shane Waldron going to play Seattle, that's a fair one. But then the other games that you have there in the schedule, like I think Green Bay in week 18 is a very fair revenge game considering what happened last year.
Yeah.
But, you know, 3 straight road games to start the month of December. Come on. Like what a tough draw for the Bears after they, had a pretty decent going up until week 11. Then, you start with Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit. And to go from like a division game to another division game on a short week and being Thanksgiving in week 13, that's tough. And then San Francisco, like it's Detroit, San Francisco, more than a week later. So they'll have, from that Thursday of Thanksgiving all the way till the next Sunday off. But then that San Francisco game that's the Fox window. That's a 4:25 Eastern time window. They go from that into the Monday night game at Minnesota. Now, that's not a short week because you have the extra day, but that's a lot of travel where you're going from like Detroit all the way to San Francisco, then back, and then up to Minnesota. Like the travel, the amount of miles that they're going to log and like what their bodies are going to be feeling like at that point of the season.
Yeah.
The bye week's week 7. It's not this normal like week 13, week 14 bye that we've grown used to the last couple of years. They get it far earlier, which is smart with the NFL doing that with teams that are in London and then, giving them time to adjust when they come
Absolutely.
back. But they better hope that they're healthy at that point because this is going to be, the time for the division race. And like most of us who have them around 10-7 this year, when you're just looking at the way that the schedule shakes out initially, you don't really have much room for error if you're expecting, in the very least, Detroit to run the table again, Green Bay to still be a very, very good team vying for the playoffs. And then if you're the Bears trying to shake things up and make some noise, that's 3 teams right there that you face. None of the other teams in the division have the schedule stacked up this way that the Bears do, but it's gonna be like it's gonna be very difficult to have any error at that point, knowing how close things could potentially be with some very competitive teams in the NFC North, and how often the Bears are having to turn around and go from one division opponent to the next.
Now, the one thing that I will say is very interesting is when I looked at the other teams' schedules, when you kind of look around at well, okay, how do the Lions match up? How does the Packers schedules match up? How does the Vikings schedule match up? It kind of feels like they're getting like some of those more heavy hitters a little bit early on as
Mhm.
well, than maybe a little bit more than the Bears are getting. So that could play into it as well. But I think you're right. The week 7 bye is going to be. I mean, when's the last time we had a bye that early? It's been a while. I want to say maybe in
Bef
2020.
I was gonna say, I think it might have been the COVID years before
Yeah,
I started covering the team, because the last 2 years, it's been these late season, like, early December buys, which are good but those are beneficial to teams that are trying to make a playoff push, where you can
yeah.
give guys a week off at a time where everybody's body is not at 100% to then be fresh for the final 4, 5 weeks of the season. This year, they better hope that health is on their side, because that can determine, all right, if you're, hovering around 500 or a game or two above 500 at the, three quarters point of the season, you really need things to break your way in order to feel good about your chances of getting into the postseason, knowing again, just like that this is the new AFC North in
Right.
terms of intrigue with quarterbacks and how competitive you expect these teams to be, where everybody has a legitimate shot, at least right now. Probably Minnesota more on the outside looking in, but everybody here has a good shot to make a case to be a playoff team.
No, for sure, and that's why this final push. I mean, like it's going to be so important for the Bears, and I like that it comes at the end because I do feel like it gives you that ultimate test. It gives you
Yeah.
that, like okay, you went through your 10 weeks, you got yourself used to the NFL. Now you get to see kind of what it's going to be like facing the Packers, facing the Lions, facing the Vikings, and in the division yesterday, I said this. The Lions are a team where I don't know why. I can't explain it. I know the Lions are a good football team, but for some reason, the Chicago Bears do a really good job against Jared Goff. And I think that Matt Eberflus remembers the sting of blowing that massive
Mhm.
lead in Detroit last year. I think we handle business versus Detroit this season. I think the Bears can actually sweep the Lions because they've got an answer there that I don't understand why. The scary part about that is I feel the same way about the Packers with the Bears.
Mhm. And
So
I think it's hard to predict. Like when I was doing my bold prediction, I wrote it, and I know it's kind of tongue in cheek. Yeah, it shouldn't be bold for you to pick that the Bears are going to beat the Green Bay Packers, but considering it hasn't happened since the first time they played them in I believe it was week 1 of 2018,
yeah,
it's pretty bold. But I have a hard time looking at this schedule thinking, okay, there's 2 wins coming against a division opponent, knowing how frequently they play
yeah,
their entire division schedule, weeks 11 through 18. Maybe I would have felt differently about that if it was like Green Bay or Detroit week 1, or, somewhere in
a
weeks
little more
1 through
spaced out.
10. But I think they're going to split. And I know that's not bold, that's not sexy by any stretch, but going 3-3 against your division when you've
That's
gone
good.
2-4 like every year since, for a while, I believe, the best finish that they've had was 2019. Before that, that's
Yeah,
not that's
probably.
not a great place. That's not like that dramatic to think of a jump for them to make. If you can beat Green Bay once, my God, that's improvement. If you can beat Minnesota again, if you can beat Detroit again, that's where you were last year, and that's taking a step beyond. Like, and I always look this up. I always tend to forget. Like they swept Minnesota during the 2021 season or 2020 season, one of those two. So it's not like they've never swept a division opponent in the last decade, but I just think it's going to be a little bit more difficult to project something like that out when they play those teams so frequently, and just knowing that there's a lot more that comes with a division game, and especially when they're all stacked up like that, it's too difficult we don't know what those teams are gonna look like at that point. Of
Yeah.
course, right now we're projecting, like, are they gonna finish 10-7 like I have them? I don't know. Injuries factor in. On paper right now, when you're looking at, like, opponent strength of schedule, they have the 3rd easiest schedule in the NFL based on their opponents' wins from last year. But that doesn't mean that their opponents haven't added to their teams or their
Right.
opponents haven't gotten better. There are a couple teams on here you can look at and say, yeah, that team is still a couple years away. Carolina, absolutely. Washington, absolutely. New England, absolutely. Can we for sure say that about Tennessee? I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, Will Levis is another year in the NFL. He's learning a new offense. Maybe that's a team, but I don't look at them and say, "Oh yeah, that's going to be an easy win." But there are a couple others where that serve as a you should win this game sort of
Yeah.
thing. And so like I have them going 10-7 because I predicted them taking advantage of that schedule and taking advantage of their opponents, strength of schedule from last year. And so like wins at Indianapolis, at Washington, at Detroit, and Minnesota should not be, completely out of the realm of possibility. But again, winning on the road in the NFL, as we know, is very, very difficult. And
Yeah.
you have to do it for them 9 times this season, to go to 9 different road games. And I mean, I guess if you include the London's a home game for them, but it's
Kind of.
kind of, yeah. Or I think I might have that flipped. Yeah, how many? Wait, they've got road
No,
games.
London
So
London is
at Houston,
technically
at Indianapolis,
yeah.
Washington, Arizona, Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay. So yeah. And then at London is the road game for them, or is
Yeah.
a home game for them, but it's on the road. But they've got the rest of those are road games.
It's a home game in spirit. Like I feel like the NFL makes that a home game for the other team to make them feel better about going over there. And it's like, well, it's not really a home game because everybody over there is a Jaguars fan because they've been doing this for however long, right? Like the Jaguars have ingratiated themselves over there.
I
So it's
know.
really a road game for everybody that goes over there. But I'm excited about this schedule. I'm not going to lie because I think that this is the perfect way to test out a rookie quarterback that has a lot of expectation. You get to see him measure up versus the other QBs, like you said. And I think the big thing is, right, like Caleb Williams, he gets to figure out the NFL game. We already know what his mindset is. I want to see him kind of with an understanding of, okay, this is the speed of the game. This is how I need to play. This is the things I need to do with the mindset that he already has of, listen, I know who the rivals are. I know who the teams that I have to go out there and beat are. Now we got that stretch coming up. Let's go out there and handle business. We saw the Bears get a Detroit win. What was last year? Last year was week 11 and week 14, I think, for Detroit, or week because it
Week
was
week 10, or no, it was week 11, week 10 or week 11. Yeah, week 14 was at home, and then week 9 wasn't it week 10 because Justin came back from his thumb injury, and
yes,
the
yes,
week
yes.
before was the Saints game
So we've
where
seen the
yeah.
Bears kind of, compete in those. Now, if you close the
Mhm,
window in the last 2 minutes, right? But compete in those games versus Detroit. And I think that this is a great way to get your first taste of Caleb Williams' career
mhm.
this season. I think that this showcases everything that you want to see.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a bloodbath to go into the season. For him, he should be very happy right now with the way that the schedule looks, where he'll get to like, I just feel like every time I say ease into it, like, these are NFL games.
It's
Every
tough
freaking
game.
game is
It's
hard,
tough game.
but it's not it doesn't carry the same stature of, "Oh, I'm going against somebody who won a Super Bowl right away from the very jump last year, from the very jump, this year." And he should be, he should know that weeks 1 through 10 are going to give him a chance to personally stack himself up against other competition that is right around his age and right around his experience level in the NFL. So, we talked about the CJ Stroud game in week 2 being, something that the Bears are circling, and they will always have to look at CJ Stroud as, okay, we chose to pass on this quarterback. What does everything else look like? Compared to like what does our situation look like compared to that guy? Well, they're also going to play Bryce Young, who they also passed on.
Yeah.
And I mean, this Carolina team doesn't project to be much better than they were last year, but it's a good chance to be like, we made the right decision. Just keep affirming the decisions that
Yeah.
you've made around this roster and around the, quarterback talent that you decided to go with.
And the part I love is, right, the Caleb Williams doesn't have to play against CJ Stroud. He's going up against those defenses. Not that Texas defense. That's a tough one, but when you look at that first 10 games, it's kind of the one defense that really stands out to you. Like, I mean,
Indianapolis, I think, just with Flus knowing their personnel
yeah,
so well, like, I predicted a win in Indy again for the Bears in Indianapolis. So I think I'll probably, based on it, probably have them starting out 2-1, which, oh my God, if they were 2-1 when they were, going into that Houston game, or no, rather going into week 4 2 years ago after
yeah.
they beat Houston at home and they had beaten the 49ers in week 1, but they'd be riding pretty darn high if they're going into that game against the Rams in week 4 at home, knowing that they're 2-1 and they just
That's
got
a
one of those wins on the road. Because road wins are
that's a
just
different
different.
2-1.
Yeah.
That's not that 2020 where we magically beat the Niners and I think Houston was god awful.
Mhm.
And we were like, we're 2-1, take what you can get, and then like everything hit the fan. We got one win over the next over the next 14 games. Courtney, appreciate you coming through. Appreciate you watching. Any nuggets that you got leading into the rest of this week? Anything else that's intriguing for you off of the schedule, or anything going on with the Bears right now?
I enjoyed their schedule release video. I will say that. I
That was
thought
good.
they didn't
Good.
overdo it. I know that social teams are around the NFL, like, this is their Super Bowl. This is what they do. This is how they justify the amount of resources that they end up pouring into it. I know some people are like, "Oh, well, the Bear one was better." Well, of course, but you can't do that every single year. I thought DJ Moore is a very good, I'm not gonna say give him an Oscar for his performance, but I thought he sold it really well.
You thought he
And
was good there. You
I
thought he
thought
was.
he I thought he, he did. What are you expecting from DJ Moore? Like, for him to, like, jump out of his skin
I
and
just want
be an
Spice Adams.
Oscar. No, but, like, that's Spice, that is who he is.
Yeah.
He
No.
is an
No. Yeah.
entertainer. I thought for any guy on the team that you'd want in that role, and of course, you're not gonna put Caleb Williams in that role right away. I thought him getting off the bus with Roma Dunze, I mean, like, as the kind of the freshman thing, and that
Yeah.
was a play on Mean Girls. I don't know if everybody got that. So remember at the end of Mean Girls when all of the Mean Girls end up kind of becoming friends, and it's like after, like, their huge blow up, they're all out in the park, and Lindsay Lohan's like, the new queen bee or whatever, but she's not as much of a jerk as she was. Then there's that scene about the new freshman coming in and they almost get hit by the bus.
Yeah.
Like, I thought the Bears played that. I got a good laugh out of that. And I thought they sold that really well. Like, you knew exactly what the scenes were, whether it was from Breakfast Club, whether it was in paying homage to Mean Girls, to Ferris Bueller's Day Off. There were a couple Home Alone references in
Yeah.
that. I thought for the Chicago references, because remember, Mean Girls took place allegedly in Evanston. I always forget that, but I thought that they did a really good job playing on the Chicago themed movies that have that high school feel to them. And
Yeah.
I actually thought Flus had when he's like, DJ, what's wrong? What's wrong? Why don't you feel well? Like, I was like, okay, is this how Flus is in meetings? Like, is he showing this much empathy to his players when they might be having a bad day? I thought Flus was very endearing in that moment.
It's
And DJ, again, I'm not telling the guy that he's going to go, like, sign up for, like, the Screen Actors Guild
yeah,
and go
yeah,
ahead
yeah.
and get, start getting royalties for stuff, but I thought he did a good job. I
I,
enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that because I
I
enjoyed all the references that they made to movies that I grew up watching.
You know what it is too. I love the Bears social team. It's one of the best social teams in the NFL. I would say the Chargers maybe is the only one that is better than the Bears, and it is very very close. Because when you see, I don't know if you saw some of the other ones out there, how they were releasing the schedule. I saw people releasing the schedule as like memes on Twitter. I saw people releasing this. I'm like, is there? You're not trying at all. You don't. Do you guys not get to see the team? Like, what's going on
The
here?
Titans didn't get off a winning horse. They did the exact same thing that they did last year when they went out to Broadway and they got people to, you know, effectively, like, name who the Titans were playing based on the mascot or based on, like, the logo, and I thought it was cute. I don't know how many more years you can do the same bit, but
Yeah,
they did a good job with theirs. I thought the Colts had a good one as well,
and
and,
that's what I love about it. The Bears are fresh every year. Yes, the Bear one was better. The Bear one was amazing, but every
can't do it
year
every year. Yeah. No,
the
I
Bears
really did
come with
like theirs, and
something
I
new.
thought there were a lot of different elements that were mixed into it, and it's cool to, like, point out the cameos of people, be like, "Oh, that's who that is. That's Young Gravy." Whoever
By
Young Gravy is.
by the way, so many tweets yesterday, so many tweets in my mentions about how I look like TJ Edwards. Oh my god.
You got that? Really?
I got so many tweets about how I look like I because he had the jacket on. I'm like, I don't really, I don't know. Like he's got the beard now. I was like, I don't really see TJ Edwards, but I'm also blind now that I took my
Yeah, about
glasses
to
off. But
say, like, you took one for the team there.
yeah, but I don't know. I so many tweets. I was like, oh okay. I guess I kind of see it. We're both lighter skinned and have beards and wear Bears hats. Like I'm not everybody light skinned, guys. I'm not. I swear I'm not. Just most of the people. Appreciate you tuning in as always, Courtney. Appreciate you rocking with us. Appreciate you guys watching. As always, hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave that 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Drop your schedule predictions in the comments below and let me know. Do I look like TJ Edwards for real? Do I got a little TJ Edwards in me? Maybe I got to put the Bears jacket on too. We'll holler at y'all later, man. Y'all stay safe, Chicago.